Hey everybody, so in today's video we're going to be talking about distribution switching. And of distribution switching, I believe that there's two different types that we can categorize it into, right? There's emergency distribution switching and also planned distribution switching. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about the first type, which is emergency distribution switching. So this is the type of switching that you're just sitting on the desk and then all of a sudden something happens, right? This is something that is unplanned, happens as typically as an emergency, right? You have something happening, whether it be a pole come down, lines, circuit lockouts, sometimes you even have storms coming in and starts wreaking havoc all of a sudden within your system. This is the type of switching that I'm talking about, right? Typically in these type of situations, stress levels have a tendency to rise up a little bit simply because all of a sudden you find yourself in a almost like a time crunch, right? Because you have to respond, you have to react quickly, and you don't have the ability and the luxury to be able to sit back at times to just sit back and think and plan your steps, plan your moves, and try to figure out how to do things properly, right? You just have to respond, you just have to react, and you have to make sure that you make your decisions properly and properly, right? Because you've got things happening and things are moving and you have to make the right decisions. Because of this, sometimes in these type of situations, you may not be able to have the luxury to think everything thoroughly. You just have to think clearly and you have to react. This is a very reactive process. This is a very reactive type of switching that depends largely on the amount of experience, knowledge, and understanding that you have that will allow you to make the right decisions and the right choices moving forward. You have to be able to move quickly once again, right? Because people are probably out. You've got personnel in need of your assistance. You've got things happening and you have to respond. Now, because of this, there's a famous saying, right? Because you have to react, because you have to think on your feet, because you have to make decisions quickly, there's a famous saying that says, we don't rise to the level of our expectations in these type of situations, but rather we fall to the level of our training. And in this type of situations, that is so true because you have to rely on your experience, you have to rely on your knowledge, you have to rely on the amount of understanding that you have, and most importantly, in these type of situations, you also have to rely not only on the people inside the control room, but also outside the control room. Because at times, let's face it, right, you may not always have all the answers, right? Sometimes I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. That's the beauty of this type of job, right? You're not alone. You'll have others around you who can help you out, pitch in, have that good brief discussion, and be able to make the right decisions and the right choices, both inside the control room and also outside as well. So, because you are moving in a quick manner, right? Because you don't have much time to think, you have to make sure that each of the decisions that you make are correct. Because the decisions that you make, the moves that you make, are crucial, right? You have the potential of putting personnel, equipment, and or customers at risk, and or to put them in a situation where they're going to be adversely affected. And this is the most crucial part of emergency distribution switching, where you have to make sure that the decisions that you make are correct. And when you are making these decisions, you have to ensure that safety above all else is at the forefront of your thoughts every time you make these decisions, every time you make these actions, right? Because you always have to think, how is this going to be affecting other people? How is this going to be affecting the personnel? How is this going to be affecting the customers? And at times you have to make a very difficult decision that may affect one of these three in an adverse manner. Sometimes, you may have to make a decision that will affect the customers and potentially cause them to lose power, right? In order to ensure that things are done correctly. And you have to make sure that the decisions are done correct, right? But above else, priority number one, as in everything that you do, safety of personnel, safety of people, safety of others is priority number one. You have to ensure that safety above all else is key, right? So when it comes to making these type of situations, you have to ensure that you utilize the operator quadrant, right? You have to ensure that you do the correct order of operations, and it's hard, right? Especially in these type of situations where you have to respond and react. You're not thinking about the operator quadrant. You're not thinking about, hey, oh, you know what, we're going to do this. This is the most important. This is not so important. You know what, this needs to be done now. This needs to be done later. You're not thinking about those things, right? You just have to ensure that at the very least, you follow it to a certain extent, right? Being quadrant number one, of course, being safety. Quadrant number two is reliability. Then afterwards, restoration. And then quadrant number four, then communication, right? At the very least, those are the general order of operations whenever you do emergency switching. And as long as you follow that in a general sense, right, to do it to your best of your ability, you should be okay. So also in these type of switchings, right, typically you utilize the operator pyramid in a bottom-up approach. So what do I mean by that? If you remember, you recall from the operator pyramid, there's four distinct levels, right? You've got the bottom base level, you've got electrical theory. Then above that, you've got the processes and procedures that are established within your company. And then above that, you've also got the system and the state that it's in, figuring out and understanding where you're working with. And then above that, you've got your external factors, right? Typically, in the emergency distribution switching, you have to take the order of operations from the bottom-up approach, right? Figuring out what the problem is using electrical theory, and then from there, figuring out what the process and procedures are in place in order to respond and react to that process. Then analyzing where you are in the system, and understanding what you have to do in order to resolve the issue. And then, of course, figuring out if anything else, any external factors, anything that that is typically not involved in the day-to-day operations, especially this type of emergency switching, then that's when those come in, right? You take a bottom-top approach when dealing with these type of situations.